Hi, I'm Katy and I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks for sewing with elastic. My first and most important tip is about pre-stretching your elastic before you cut it. We pre-stretch our elastic so that the fibres inside have a chance to relax. This is called exercising the elastic. We do this so that the elastic doesn't grow and cause an ill-fitting garment once we sew. It's really important and it's a step not to skip. So I really recommend pre-stretching your elastic because I've had elastic grow by 1 to 2 inches when I haven't done this. The next thing is what stitch we're going to use. We use a long straight stitch, a wide zigzag stitch, or perhaps a stretch stitch of some kind, so a lightning stitch or a triple stretch stitch to attach elastic to any kind of garment or to each other. The other type of thing that we need to think about is the needle that we use. I like to use a stretch needle, but you can also use a ballpoint needle, anything that doesn't damage the elastic fibres. And also, if you don't, you might find that you'll get skip stitches, and that's one of the most common causes why. When we're threading an elastic through a casing, we use a special tool, something like this called a bodkin. It has a special eye in it, and you put your elastic through the end of the eye, and it locks in. And then you can use the metal tool to feed it through the casing. One important step not to forget is to anchor the end of the elastic onto the garment so you don't lose the tail inside the casing as you're feeding it through. Another little trick I like to use is so I know that my elastic hasn't twisted when I'm inserting it into a casing. I use my air erasable marker and I put a dot on the same side of the elastic. When I feed it through the casing, I look for those 2 dots to make sure they match up, and most likely my elastic hasn't twisted inside the casing. When using woven elastic, it can be quite bulky when you put the seam into a loop. So one little trick I like to do there is that I put a piece of fabric behind and I put the 2 pieces of elastic side by side but not overlapping. I then do a wide zigzag stitch over the top and you'll see that you'll get a really nice, and I trim the excess fabric off and you get a really nice non-bulky seam there. Another trick, if you don't have a bodkin, a simple safety pin will also help you feed it through the casing. Now you need to think about the size of the elastic that you're going to use for your project. Is it something that's going to be a waistband? You're probably going to need a more wider and one that doesn't roll. Is it something that you're going to use for a neck casing? Is it going to be on underwear? Does it need to be nice and soft? Or nice and pretty with something like a lingerie elastic. So these are things you need to think about. And it's important to get the right width elastic for the job because cutting it down actually doesn't generally work because of the way that the fibres have been stitched together. It can just make the elastic unravel or not stretch correctly. I hope this has helped you and happy sewing.